Welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast, brought to you by Circa. I'm your host, James Anderson, and I got my friend Bob Osgood with me. And usually when Bob's on, we're breaking down the Red Sox, but Bob got invited to join the Too Early Meatball Draft, and that took place last night, one of the highlights of my year, every year. And this year we did 15 rounds, probably up doing that for over 3 hours last night. And this is the first high stakes draft of 2027. We were setting the ADP in many respects here. There's going to be some outlier picks from these first 225 picks, 15 rounds, 15 teams, but it is kind of remarkable every year. This draft does end up mirroring ADP to a greater extent than you might expect. Bob, this was your first year in the Too Early Meatball Draft. I had a lot of fun last night. What was your kind of reactions to being in the league and just sort of how the draft went last night?
Yeah, and thanks for having me on, James. This was, I agree, an absolute blast. It definitely went a lot longer into the night than I expected, as I think the transition of 11 to 15 rounds was definitely, for you guys probably a little bit different, but I got in Rob DiPietro's ear previously, if there's ever a spot open, that it's such a cool concept, I think, because you're going off of, no values, no projections, there's some like Steamer 600 type of projections you can use, but there's no ADP. So it's really just get your guys. And I went in with a list, and then kind of the way that it unfolded at many positions was a lot different than my list. So, that's not that, some people are right or wrong. It's just, that's where the valuation is for that person at that time, because we're all going in blind. So I thought it was just pretty fascinating and a lot of fun. But I felt like I had taken a final exam by the end of it with, looking through 15 rounds worth started to get difficult as we got closer to the end.
Yeah, no doubt. This with there being no ADP, I find myself second guessing myself when I'm like on the clock in this draft, much more than I would in a normal draft. And we'll get into some of our specific picks that maybe we wish we could have back or struggled with a little bit. But first, I just wanted to kind of break down the first couple rounds, because it is a very different looking first round in some ways, especially right at the top. Rob DiPietro, who has a dominant team this year, he had the first pick. He took Pete Crow Armstrong, and then Steve Weimer, who's won the league twice. I think he's going to come in either second this year. Maybe he can catch Rob, but certainly second. Steve Weimer gets Shohei Ohtani again. I think he's had Shohei Ohtani all 5 years in this league. And I do want to say, I was listening to Bubba and the Blooms recap this morning when I was walking my dog, and Brian Bloomfield mentioned how this league kind of feels like a home league. I definitely echo that sentiment. It definitely feels more like a home league than something you're doing with strangers in Vegas or that type of thing. But so PCA goes first, then Shohei Ohtani, then Bobby Witt to Phil Dussault. If you know anything about high stakes fantasy baseball, you can already tell this is a loaded league, because Steve Weimer's in it, Phil Dussault's in it, Rob DiPietro's in it, Mike Mager's in it. Loaded league for sure. So Bobby Witt goes third, then Aaron Judge goes fourth to RotoWire's Ryan Roof. Junior Caminero goes fifth. I took James Wood sixth. Then Juan Soto, Fernando Tatis goes eighth overall. Tatis eligible now at second in outfield. Yordan Alvarez goes ninth to Bob. Jordan Walker, probably the first big surprise of the draft. Jordan Walker goes to Bubba at 10. Then Elliot De La Cruz, 11. Jacob Mizorowski at 12, the first pitcher off the board. CJ Abrams, amid this breakout season, he gets into the first round. He goes to pick 13. Then Jose Ramirez at 14. Jackson Chourio at 15. Bob, what did you think of this first round? I wasn't surprised by the PCA pick. I mean, Rob basically let us all know ahead of time that he was going to do that. I wanted Junior Caminero at 6. Mike Mager took him right in front of me at 5, but that's okay. That's understandable. You ended up with Yordan Alvarez at 9. What were some of your takeaways from the first round?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I was too surprised by the first 7. That kind of went how I expected it to. I personally had Yordan 8th, and then I had CJ Abrams 9th, because if this was a March draft, I probably would have had Mizorowski in that group, but I don't think I could live with myself if the 105-mile-an-hour fastball finally catches up to him and something happens to his arm late in the season. So, like, I'm not anti Mizorowski, but I just couldn't do it with the season not being over yet. So I wanted to go with a bat there. It was interesting. I feel like if we drafted a week ago, Tatis might not have gone 8th, but he also homered twice, like while we were logging on last night. So there was just so much hype there. And plus we all realized that second base is a wasteland. So I think that combination pushed him up to the middle of the first round, which I totally get. So yeah, I mean, like I said, I had Yordan 8th, CJ Abrams 9th. So like him going 13, he's right at the top of the player rater there this year. And it's just really broken out 5 category type of thing. So I thought that was a great value for Greg Martin, who got Abrams, and then Skubal coming back at picks 13 and 18. I thought that was just a fantastic start for someone that was located in the back of the draft there. And then, I guess kind of with Dom Morello, like he had the turn. So I would consider Connor Griffin part of the first round as well, going with Churio. That was an interesting pick too, because I wondered whether I could get Connor Griffin coming back at, would that be 2.7 there? But no, there's no chance. And it sounded like there were 3 other people in between us that would have taken Griffin there. So that was kind of like the first kind of, fork in the road type of point for me of the draft, was to see where Connor Griffin was going to go and how much hype was there. It doesn't matter that he's been hurt for much of this year. Like, the hype is still there with him. So yeah, I didn't think there were too many shockers in the first round. It was more the second round where a couple of things unfolded that I wasn't totally expecting.
Yeah, as is often the case, the first round dominated by outfielders and shortstops. If you want to include Connor Griffin, who went 16, and Corbin Carroll, who went 17, the only non-shortstops or outfielders to go in those first 17 were Shohei Ohtani, Junior Caminero, Jacob Mizorowski, and Jose Ramirez. The other 13 picks in the top 17 were all outfielders or shortstops. And yeah, like CJ Abrams, if you don't have him on any fantasy teams, you might not think of him as a first round pick in 2027, but he's at 29 homers, 24 steals, 77 runs, 91 RBI, hitting 280. So absolutely monster season for CJ Abrams in all 5 categories there. And yeah, you talked about Connor Griffin. I love that turn for Dom there. Churio, Griffin, just a beautiful collection of young talent to start things off. And in my early prep, I was sort of ready. I was like, I'm pulling the trigger on Connor Griffin if he gets to me in the second, but not a realistic.
We were all thinking the same thing, I guess.
Yeah. And this is the fun thing about this draft. It's almost sort of like you sort of almost have these stocks now in these players for the rest of the season, and you're kind of like watching their stock go up, go down. And Connor Griffin's the type of guy where like he could come back and, this could end up being like close to his max pick if he comes back and is the guy that he was, for about a month there before the first injury. I think he's going kind of in that 10, 11, 12 range in the first round. So didn't slide as far as I was hoping, but not surprised, I guess. But yeah, you mentioned the second round, Connor Griffin, then Corbin Carroll. Ryan Bloomfield pairing Jose Ramirez and Corbin Carroll, kind of a classic Bloomfield build there. Tariq Skubal, the second starting pitcher off the board, then Mason Miller, the first closer off the board with the 4th pick of the second round. Dan Kenyon pairs Jacob Mizorowski and Mason Miller. That's just a lot of fun right there. Then Julio Rodriguez, the 5th pick of the 2nd round. Sal Stewart, believe it or not, Sal Stewart, the first baseman off the board last night, also eligible at 3rd base, of course. Then Christopher Sanchez, Kyle Schwarber, Cam Schlittler. You took Christopher Sanchez. I took Yoshinobu Yamamoto, so we each got a starting pitcher in the 2nd round. Gunnar Henderson goes to Mike Mager. Drake Baldwin, the first catcher off the board. Ryan Roof pairing Baldwin with Aaron Judge. And then Jesus Luzardo to Phil. Chris Sale to Weimer. And Jackson Merrill and Miguel Vargas there to Rob DiPietro at the turn, the 31 and 30 turn there. So yeah, you mentioned like the 2nd round being a bit more wild. This was definitely a starting pitcher run of sorts here. At least for me, when I was picking in the 2nd round, by the time it got to me, Griffin's gone, Corbin Carroll, Julio Rodriguez are gone. At that point, I was looking at like Drake Baldwin, Kevin McGonigal, Samuel Basayo. Like those were the hitters I was looking at. And it just felt like at least one of them would be there for me in the 3rd based on the way the starters were going off the board. So I jumped in on the starter run. You were in it before me with Sanchez there. Yamamoto, taking Yamamoto over like Chris Sale, Dylan Cease. I may not have gone that route in March. I guess I just kind of trust Yamamoto to be healthy a bit more than I do Sale come spring training, but you never know with that type of thing. So what stood out to you about the 2nd, Bob?
Yeah, I mean, I guess kind of starting early in the 2nd, I agree that Sal Stewart wasn't who I was expecting to be the first baseman off the board. I kind of had Kurtz and Rice that I thought were at the top of that tier. And then, there's a whole group that you can make a case for. But to see Stewart as the first baseman and then Miguel Vargas as the 2nd, I guess I know that he has 3rd base eligibility too, but Rob taking him at the 2-3 turn was interesting just because I figured Kurtz and Rice would be the first 2 that would go from that group. But, like I said, it's a get your guys draft. And, especially like with Rob on the turn there, he's got to wait 28 picks and Vargas isn't going to come back to him and has that 1st and 3rd eligibility. That Sanchez, Schlittler, Yamamoto group, those are the 3 that I was looking at. Totally get your pick there. Like maybe this, especially with the way that the Dodgers structure their innings, like he's never going to be a huge innings guy and he has less than a strikeout an inning, but like, he's once again there with a 2.60 ERA and an 0.89 whip, which just like, you can't find that really anywhere else. So I agree with you taking Yamamoto there. Sanchez versus Schlittler was tough for me. I just went with the little bit more track record for Sanchez. I just trusted him slightly more, but that was flip a coin type of thing. Gunnar in at the 11th pick in the 2nd round, not much of a discount. He kind of just stayed where he's been going the last couple of years. I thought he might drop a little bit. And then we get into the catcher discussion, so you're saying you were even considering McGonigal and Basayo late in the 2nd round and you end up getting both, which I'm sure you'll get to, but how the catchers unfolded, I thought you talk about scarcity with catchers and closers. I get in a standalone league why the closers weren't pushed up as much, but I thought it's still a 2 catcher league. I thought that there were some really good values at catcher. Ryan Roof taking Baldwin in the late 2nd. I figured that Baldwin, Langoliers, Goodman, and Basallo would be the first 4 catchers, but they were really spread out. Baldwin going in the 2nd, and then I took Langoliers in the mid-3rd, Goodman and Basallo going in the 4th round. I thought we might see a catcher run after Baldwin went, and it ended up being a lot more split up. So, just was interesting that didn't start a run there. And then the other kind of from a scarcity perspective, Mason Miller going early in the second round. Like I said, it doesn't have an overall component, but just for Kenyon to get Miz and Mason Miller from a ratios perspective might be a cheat code, and then he goes and gets 3 bats after that. So it's so interesting to see the different builds in the early rounds. If that's what they're leaving you there, Miz at pick 12, and then you can get a stud closer at the beginning of the second. I'm really interested to see what his team ends up looking like.
Yeah, I'm really not sure how sort of sticky this order of the catchers going in this draft is going to end up being. For anyone interested, where I am streaming this on YouTube, and you can follow along and see the whole draft board there. But yeah, like Baldwin, I have no doubt that he will kind of solidify as the top guy, barring something unforeseen over the next 6 weeks, just because like that, the combination of batting average and playing time is tough to match from a guy who's also going to hit 20 plus homers. But then I actually had Basayo second at catcher for me, but like Shea and Goodman right there. I'm a Dingler believer, so I don't hate taking Dingler among this group either. But I don't know exactly how, come October when the DCs are up and running. I'm not sure exactly how the public is going to rank those guys, the Langoliers, Basayo, Goodman. Does Dingler go? Like I got Basayo after Dingler. I'd be interested to sort of see how that.
I missed that one.
Kind of shapes out. But I also felt like once that kind of top group went at catcher, it felt like some of the other picks then, kind of say picks 7 through like 10 or so, Ivan Herrera, Gabriel Moreno, Adley Rutschman, Liam Hicks, like those all felt like a little too pricey for me. Where those guys had to be selected, even though I like all those players. Like if this is sort of the way the catcher pool sort of shakes out, I'll be trying to get at least one of the top 5, and I might even get 2 of the top 5 in some drafts, just because I'd rather take one of the top 5 guys. You could throw William Contreras in there, one of the top 6 guys. I'd rather take one of them in the top 4 rounds, I think, than take like Gabriel Moreno, who I love. Like in the 7th round, you might not be getting more than like 12 homers from him there. It's tough, but it's a tough position. It keeps seeming like it's getting deeper and deeper with the prospect talent that we've got coming every year. But like Liam Hicks is catcher 10, Cal Raleigh's catcher 11, Carter Jensen's catcher 12, Francisco Alvarez catcher 13. Like it's still not that deep of a position. I really loved the prices on like Ryan Jeffers. Ryan Jeffers went in the 10th round to Greg Martin. Actually love that combo he got. Will Smith in the 9th, Ryan Jeffers in the 10th.
Yeah, that's great.
And then I love Joe Mack, who fell a bit then to Rob D in the 12th there. But that's sort of where I felt like the best values were. It was like the top guys, and then that kind of Smith, Jeffers, Mack area.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think Contreras should be included there. I figured all 6 of those would be gone by the 4th round, which they were. But, in hindsight, I took Langoliers in the 3rd. If I knew that Basayo would be there coming back in the 4th, I probably would have gone elsewhere. But he was there, and you got a great value there in the late 4th.
All right, let's head to a quick break. But when we come back, I'll discuss my full team so far. We'll talk about Bob's full team, any regrets, any favorite picks. So stay tuned to RotoWire. Circa $1,000,008 and Circa Survivor are going big for the 2026 football season with $30 million in guaranteed prizes. Cash in this football season in Las Vegas with 3 Circa Sports Contests. Entry starting at $1,000 with no rake. Circa Million, 18 weeks of point spread action, 128 ways to win. Winner takes home $1 million. Circa Survivor, pick one winner each week. Last one standing wins $20 million guaranteed to the winners. Circa Grandissimo, a massive contest with a $100,000 entry. Enter in Nevada, play from anywhere, 30 million guaranteed. Visit circasports.com/contest for details. All right, back with Bob Osgood, and we are recapping last night's 5th annual Too Early Meatball Draft, the first high-stakes fantasy baseball draft of 2027. And the first one of these 5 years ago was 7 rounds. And we've gradually expanded now to 15 rounds. I will say that it felt like maybe the sweet spot to me might be like 13 rounds, but it definitely, I was kind of going on fumes at the end there, and it definitely felt like there's going to be some bad picks from these final few rounds. Like there's always some shaky picks like in the final few rounds, no matter how deep we go. But I just have a feeling that some of these are going to look shaky, and they could be some of my picks. We'll get to it here. So yeah, I started with James Wood, then Yoshinobu Yamamoto, got Kevin McGonigal in the 3rd, Samuel Basayo in the 4th. Like I said, I valued McGonigal and Basayo kind of more as like late 2nd rounders. McGonigal, I absolutely love the corner middle. Like there's definitely a difference to me in a guy who's shortstop 3rd versus a guy who's 1st 3rd, because it's just more flexibility. First base is so deep that like having guys with first base eligibility not quite as valuable to me. So like I love the McGonigal corner middle eligibility. I was kind of erring towards batting average and power was kind of the two categories that I really wanted to load up on in these 15 rounds to the best of my ability. And so McGonigal I thought was a nice pair for James Wood there. Then grabbed Peyton Tolley as my SP2. I thought he went pretty well with Yamamoto. Riley Green, Willie Abreu, some just steady outfield power producers, everyday middle of the order guys. I got Geraldo Perdomo and then Sam Antonacci as some more sort of speed focused guys. Those maybe were a little reachy. After Willie Abreu in the 7th, I started to get a little kind of uncomfortable, and it's pitchers are flying off the board. There's a ton of hitters out there I like. I'm just staring at all these awesome first basemen, but it's like, do I get in on that yet? So just the middle of the draft kind of things started feeling a little weird to me. Any thoughts on that kind of first 7 or 8 or so picks there?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think that your top 4 were outstanding, getting Wood, Yamamoto, McGonigal, and Basayo as a start. I had totally circled for maybe round 6, so you got him in round 5 before I had the chance to grab him. But just as somebody who has watched him pitch, up close with the Red Sox, like I have fewer and fewer questions about him every time that I see him go out there, other than what's his innings count going to be. And they've done a great job of like building in extra days of rest. He pitches more on 5 days rest, which is still fine because he's so efficient, in his pitch counts and all of that he's still going to end up probably throwing 160 to 170 innings this year. And maybe he can get beyond that. And that's combined with his minors innings. But, the strikeouts, we're seeing a lot of double digits there. So, it's kind of I wasn't sure if he would go there, but I don't disagree with the pick either because I love the player. As you said, Green and Abreu, just like I was trying also to focus more on power this year because I'm looking at my teams that aren't doing that well. And granted, some of them are because, the Brent Rookers of the world that I took too much of that missed the whole season type of thing. You know, I'm trying just not to be deficient in that area. So protecting my batting average and power, I was kind of on the same wavelength as you. We can go over some of those picks that I made. So, you know, Green and Abreu, that's perfect as your second and third outfielders. And then, yeah, I mean, so Perdomo, Antonacci, and Eldridge, you kind of, as you said, you went 5 hitters in a row there. And, you know, you had your 2 starters. You waited a little bit on closer, which I don't think was a bad move because I thought the closer prices were totally reasonable in this draft. So, you know, I think that your hitting is going to be excellent. And, you know, you'll, I'm guessing when we come out of the break in October, go with a lot more pitching to go along with what you have there. I think, and I know you haven't said it yet, but Tyler Soderstrom in the 11th, you know, that's who I was going to take 3 picks later. So that was great value. Honestly, from that whole group, I think probably the best pick you made.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I mean, I think the toughest thing about this draft for me is just the starting pitching and sort of how much of it to take, when to take it, like when to get in on it, because after and like Tolley in the 5th, I was totally fine with him being my SP2. I like Gavin Williams, Peyton Tolley, and Garrett Cole were the guys that I kind of had them like lumped together as potential second SPs. Gavin Williams rightfully went ahead of where I would have had to take him there, but was between Peyton Tolley and Garrett Cole there. Would have been happy with either of those in the 5th. I think my biggest regret maybe is just, could I have waited longer on Antonacci? That maybe feels a little reachy. You know, he's struggled against lefties, so the only way I would really regret that pick is if like he ends up in just like a really strict platoon next year. But I honestly, like the second outfield eligibility was kind of a huge reason there. And second base, like we can talk about this quickly before we get to your team. Like second base is just really tough. So there were 15 second basemen taken in this whole thing. There were 25 first basemen. There were 19 catchers. There were 19 third basemen. There were 19 shortstops. So second base, by far the weakest position, at least determined by these 15 drafters. So you only had 15 second basemen going. And this is just it's such a weak position because the 15th second baseman taken is Angel Ganao of the Guardians, who's got like 2 weeks in the big leagues under his belt. Travis Bazzana did not get drafted in this. But like, you know, you got Ezekiel Duran as the 13th guy off the board. You know, taking Antonacci when Nico Horner was available a couple rounds later, you know, definitely paying the tax there for the dual eligibility. Jackson Holiday went later. Like that's probably the one, like taking Antonacci where I did, I regretted it a little bit, but you know, I like getting Eldridge in the 10th and Soderstrom in the 11th. So I don't know if I would have necessarily wanted to not get those picks, but the Antonacci one's probably my least favorite of my picks. And then I got Raisel Iglesias as my closer in the 12th round. That felt fine. Isaac Paredes, and then Jose Soriano and Roki Sasaki were my last 2 picks in the 14th and 15th rounds. Just not meeting the mark, I would say, for what I would shoot for in an SP3 or an SP4. But this draft is just so it's a challenge because you either have to take a bunch of pitching with 6 weeks and a playoffs left to go in the season, or you're just going to look at your pitching and it's not going to feel like enough. Like Phil out of the 3-hole, he gets Luzardo, Cease, Munoz, McLean, McGill, Cade Anderson. Like he's got so much pitching talent on his team. He's got Ryan Weathers, you know, Ryan Weathers as his SP5, and Weathers might be better than my SP3. So like there's some teams that really went after pitching, Dan Kenyon similarly. So it's not like every team was just being cautious with pitching. So if you were cautious with pitching, it just felt like it was tough to get enough. I think we're going to get into your team here now, but like I think I like the way that you attack pitching more than the way that I did, because you kind of kept going at it and you didn't take that long break like I did. And I really especially like the different outs you gave yourself with your later pitching picks. So, you know, why don't you kind of break down sort of your first, you know, half of your draft or so here, Bob?
Yeah. So, and I mean, just to get back to your point on Antonacci, like, would you have maybe gone first base there? I know you said you waited a little bit, but right after you made that pick was what, Freeman, Devers, Garcia, and then you ended up getting Eldridge. Like, if you did it again, would you grab one of those? Because it was kind of like playing chicken with first baseman, but then there was a big group of them that were all in the same tier the 2 rounds after that.
Honestly, I think the guy I would have taken instead would have been Cade Cavalli.
All right. I was going to ask you about him later.
Take an SP in the 9th there instead of Antonacci. Like, have Cade Cavalli as my SP3, and then just kind of see where the chips fall. Like, there's still, like, is my draft ruined if I don't get Sam Antonacci? Like, of course not. So, right. Like, I'd rather have Cavalli there. In hindsight, just to kind of beef up my rotation a bit, give me a bit more strikeout punch there. So that, because like first base, like I looked at Freddie Freeman, I looked at Rafael Devers, but just based on what I'd already kind of assembled, it just felt like I needed speed more than what I was going to be getting from Freeman or Devers, especially given the amount of first basemen still available. So like taking Freddie Freeman in the 9th round when Jonathan Aranda goes in the 12th round, like, just first base is going to be something I'm just fascinated by all offseason, because I just think you're constantly going to be in a draft where like best player available is a first baseman, and you're just going to have to decide like when to hit that button.
Yeah, I mean, I felt that in this draft. Like, I kept looking at how many good first basemen were left, and I was like, you know, just trying to fight off the urge of getting a second one, even after I took Rafi Devers. But yeah, just to go through the top half of my draft, I took Jordan in the 1st, Christopher Sanchez in the 2nd, and then Langoliers in the 3rd that we had already mentioned. You know, if there's a pick that I might want to have back, it would be JJ Weatherholt in the 4th. But I mean, there's multiple reasons. And it's funny that you say that about your second baseman. I don't know if we should regret taking a second baseman because of what the landscape looks like. And that was the reason behind it. I wanted Bryce Terang, and Jenny Butler took Terang right before me in the 4th. But taking care of that early catcher and getting a second baseman and then not having to think about it again was important to me. I have Weatherholt 3rd of that Griffin McGonigal tier that came up early this season. But I don't think he's that far behind. And I think he's got, 4 categories that he's already showing this season. The batting average lags a little bit, but, I think that can improve in his second season. So, I might have done that differently, but that was strictly because I think second base sucks. And there's so many guys that are losing eligibility there going into next season. I knew that I wanted to go closer in round 5, which kind of pushed me again towards second base, because at that point there had only been a few that had gone. And then, in terms of who was still out there, Hader and Munoz and Louis Varland went. I ended up taking Aroldis Chapman in round 5. So, and there was a couple others I would have been comfortable with taking in round 5. So I knew that I would probably go closer. More reason that I wanted to take second base in round 4. And I've taken Roman Anthony in round 6, which, I had a lot of shares this season, but I had a lot of round 4 and round 5. And I originally had targeted him in round 7, and then he hit like a 500-foot homer in Double-A yesterday, which shouldn't matter. But I just was like, is there going to be enough hype to push him one more round? So I got my guy in round 6 that I think, if he has a big September, that he might push back up to where he was in draft season a year ago. Then went Otto Lopez in round 7, which is, feels like I might have pushed him up a little bit, but then you look at the player rater, and I think the changes that Lopez has made, he's hitting the ball harder, and he's leading the league in batting average, I believe, still. Needed steals. I pretty much ignored steals to that point. So just getting a solid shortstop, protecting the batting average, and getting some steals there in round 7. And then I went with Reed Detmers in round 8 as my second starter. You mentioned Cavalli. I took my longest on that pick because I was debating Detmers and Cavalli in round 8. And then Cavalli actually went to round 10 and went the pick before me to Bubba. And I was totally going to be fine taking Cavalli as my third starter in round 10. I want to ask you who you preferred out of Detmers and Cavalli, because I looked at the two and it just, they looked exactly the same. And I don't know, Detmers might add a slightly higher K percentage or something that I use as a tiebreaker.
Yeah, that is really close. And I think part of, I probably would have gone Cavalli, but I think part of the reason that I didn't get enough starting pitching to kind of keep me happy is that I was constantly looking at the starting pitchers available, and I'd see 2 or 3 that I liked the same. And instead of just choosing one of those 2 or 3, I would be like, well, I'll just see if one of them comes back, and then they'd both be gone or whatever. And then I was down to my next group of guys. So I think that kind of goes back to that Antonacci over Cavalli. I think just being willing to take one when there's 3 and just being okay with if a guy was going to come back and they don't come back. You took Otto Lopez. I love that pick. Here are the shortstops that kind of went ahead of Otto Lopez. So you had, I took McGonigal in the 3rd, and then it was Francisco Lindor, Trey Turner, Zach Neto, Jeremy Pena, and there was these guys were kind of going every round or so. So they weren't going back to back to back or anything. And then you took Otto Lopez in the 7th, and then the next shortstop was Geraldo Perdomo to me. So I definitely think Lopez compares more similarly, I think, to that group that went just ahead of him than to the group that went just behind him, because you're getting a little bit of everything from him.
If you look at the player rater on Razzball for 15 team, it's Abrams is $39, and then Witt and Otto are $25, and then Elliott $23. So, you can't just go off of that, of course. Lopez doesn't have that much of a track record, but I just think he's made some gains in a lot of different areas that, despite losing second base, I still trust him to kind of bring that forward to next year.
Yeah, no doubt. And I was really intrigued by the way you attacked relief pitcher. We'll call it relief pitcher, but in the 12th round, you grab Grant Taylor of the White Sox, and then in the 15th round, you grab Justin Martinez of the Diamondbacks, and both of them were in the mix for me. I end up taking Sasaki over Martinez. Who knows which of Sasaki or Martinez has a better final 6 months or 6 weeks here. But I could definitely regret that one. There's a chance that if you hadn't taken Justin Martinez, he might have been the first player selected of the 16th round, potentially, when we come back. If Martinez just looks like a lockdown closer the rest of the way, which he very well may. But then the Grant Taylor pairing with Martinez, and you already had Aroldis Chapman. I just love the sort of, it's you're protected sort of in several different ways. You might be getting saves from Chapman, Taylor, and Martinez, but you might be getting starts from Taylor as well. So it seems like you don't really have any clear sort of weaknesses on the pitching side to me after the first 15 rounds, just because of the way that you kind of finish things off there with Taylor and Martinez.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I feel like they've mentioned moving Grant Taylor to the rotation, and if they do, great, because like, do I think that he can carry the 25% K minus walk that he had in the bullpen over to a starter? Probably not. That rarely happens, but if it's even close to that, um, and just he's 2.08 ERA in 65 innings, like that's a pretty good workload for this year. So if he transitions to a starter and throws 140 innings with good ratios and K percentage, like I'll be happy with that. And if they keep him as a reliever, hopefully closer, then I feel like I should be set in that area. So, yeah, I mean, I tried to just target, high K guys wherever I could, and he was one of those. I wondered if he would go earlier, but that was, again, maybe it's the uncertainty of what his role is going to be, and he doesn't have that many saves for, someone that has pitched in high leverage and has a lot of innings this year. It's not like a huge save total. And then, yeah, I mean, with Martinez, I was looking at him and then Robert Suarez as well from Atlanta, just because with Iglesias, who you took as a free agent, I'm thinking they paid him significant money as a free agent, but he had a forearm injury that just scared me off a little bit. So I figured Martinez already had the surgery, and actually was checking the box score during the draft, and he was pitching, I think his first appearance back, threw a shutout inning. I was like, all right, he's out there healthy. And I figure, maybe by the end of the year, he might slide into that role. But it seems, early last season, the results weren't there because he was hurt, but I think they considered him the closer of the future. And exactly like you said, if he gets in that role in September, I think he would have been an early 16th round pick coming back.
Yeah, like there were 21 relievers that got selected in these 225 picks last night. And I'll be this will all be in the article up on RotoWire. Might be live when you're listening to this, but I'm lumping in Grant Taylor and Didier Fuentes in as relievers, even though they might be stretched out. So between 19 and 21 relievers were selected. And it's very chalky at the beginning. It's, Mason Miller, Kate Smith, Joan Duran, Louis Varland, Josh Hader, Andres Munoz. You took Aroldis Chapman as the 7th reliever off the board. Brian Baker is the 8th reliever off the board, based on his excellent season with the Rays this year. And then things kind of go a little haywire. Rob takes Mason Montgomery of the Pirates as the 9th reliever off the board. Very, very talented lefty reliever who has kind of settled into things here of late, but obviously extremely limited track record in the 9th inning has Mason Montgomery. And then David Bednar, free agent. He's the 10th reliever off the board. Trevor McGill of the Brewers, 11th. Jacob Latz, 12th. Riley O'Brien, 13th. And then things go crazy again. We got Ben Joyce. We got Edwin Diaz. Felix Bautista is the 18th reliever selected. Daniel Palencia is the 21st and final reliever selected. So there's just a ton of boom bust upside volatility among these kind of 3rd, 4th, 5th tier relievers selected here. Easy to just say we'll get one of the top 6 or 7 guys, but then you're sacrificing somewhere else. But I don't know, looking at the way the relievers went and how it all played out, I like the way you attacked it. But do you think that you have to sort of be cognizant of that and make sure you do get at least one guy that is somewhat trustworthy, or are you willing to just kind of take a couple shots and hope that it works out with some of these higher volatility guys?
I mean, if it stays like this, then I would be fine with waiting, but I think the relief pitcher landscape will change more than anything else by the time draft season rolls around. Jacob Latz in the 9th round to Jenny is just a steal. I think he's just been outstanding. I had him kind of in the same tier as Varland and Baker, of just, people who got jobs this season and are on decent to good teams, and have great ratios. Like, I think that's a steal there. I look at who didn't go, Abner Uribe, Devin Williams, Pete Fairbanks going to be a free agent. Pagan may or may not be a free agent. I mentioned Suarez. Like, we don't know about Helsley's health and Palencia. Like, those were 7 relievers that I thought all could have gone in this draft. I couldn't believe Devin Williams didn't go, but I also wasn't willing to take that chance. So I think this will, then Kenley Jansen's another one, right, where he could retire, but he also could get 35 saves again next year. So there's 8 or 9 that, I think probably might be in this mix, but a lot of it with like Uribe, Williams, Suarez, Helsley, Palencia, all on the IL. I get why people weren't willing to take that risk.
Yeah, there's a lot of we're all passing on. Like, Steve Weimer's got a just loaded team of just A-listers.
Unbelievable.
But we all passed on we all willingly let him put this team together, right?
We had a say in the matter.
Right. Yeah. It's not like he just showed up and had all these guys and we're like, what happened? We all willingly passed on Ronald Acuna in the 2nd round, and we all willingly passed on Vladimir Guerrero in the 4th round, and Ketel Marte in the 6th round, and Cal Raleigh in the 8th round. So we all played a role in this, but then when the guy with the most success in the history of the league ends up with all these guys, then it sort of makes you at least second guess yourself a little bit for allowing that to happen. I don't know. What did you think of the team Steve put together out of the 2-hole?
Yeah, I had a note that just in terms of my favorite teams, he would be first. As you said, we all had a say in this. Even Royce Lewis in the 9th. He's probably going to pick up second base eligibility and have 3 positions, and we're all kind of chasing multi-eligible guys, and he added that in. He added Griffin Jackson, George Kirby in the 11th and 12th. Jax is on the IL, but should be back soon. Kirby, he hasn't been good this season, but he doesn't need all of these guys to bounce back to the levels they were at before 2026. He just needs half of them to do that, and he could easily win the league. He went Ohtani, Sale, Acuna, Contreras, Guerrero, DeGrom, Marte, Raleigh, Royce Lewis is the first 9. And there's just an insane amount of talent there. And like I said, if 5 of those hit, he's in great shape.
And Steve's a Bolte guy. Steve took my guy Henry Bolte in the 13th. So
that was a snipe for you.
Not really, but it was just nice to see. It was a nice vote of confidence for a player I hope to draft plenty of for 2027 in Henry Bolte there. And actually, let's move to the rookies. So I've got a grouping of 29 rookies here. So this is anyone who is rookie eligible heading into this year. And some of these guys are still prospect eligible, but obviously Griffin was first, pretty chalk with Stewart, McGonigal, Basayo, etc. Cade Anderson is the 9th rookie selected here. He's in between Carson Bench and Nolan McLean. So Cade Anderson goes ahead of Nolan McLean in this draft, ahead of Parker Messick. Phil Dussault took Cade Anderson at the end of the 6th round. Obviously knew he was going to get drafted in this. Projection systems love Cade Anderson. Do you think 6th round Cade Anderson, is that likely to be around where he's kind of going? Do you think he could go higher? Obviously he could go lower if he's hurt or if he's up and doesn't pitch well or something, but any thoughts on Cade Anderson in the 6th round there?
I would say that I don't think he'll go in the 6th round, but Phil took him, and I think people will see that, and Phil knows what he's doing, obviously. I did ask him after we stopped recording, kind of what was behind that, and he said it was just the crazy projections that he has. I think you guys have talked about that on a couple other podcast, just that he ranks out. I think his ratios are like top 6 or 7 starters, even though he hasn't debuted yet. So he said it was definitely based off of the projections that he has. I was surprised to see him go there. I agreed with you. I thought he'd be maybe like somewhere in the 8th to 10th round. But yeah, Phil's staff is unbelievable there. If Cade Anderson works out, I think in the 6th round, there was a couple of like rookies that I want to ask you about. So there was in the outfielders was Wyatt Langford, Roman Anthony, Carson Bench all went consecutively. I was interested in all 3 of those, looking to take an outfielder in the 6th, kind of, young upside players. Did you have them ranked in any order, or does one of those values stick out to you?
Langford was the one I wanted of those. Langford went first. He went early 6th round to Greg Martin. Yeah, I think that's a great discount on Langford. Obviously, he's kind of the new Byron Buxton sort of. But he's like 25. I think next year is like his age 25 season. He's still running plenty. He's going to hit high in that lineup whenever he's healthy. And, he went about a round after Buxton in this. He went after Kyle Tucker. I would definitely take Langford over Kyle Tucker. I wanted Jack Caglione. He went right after I took Peyton Tolley. So that wasn't going to happen. But yeah.
So I think Ryan crushed those picks there. They were all guys I wanted one round later. So he took Caglione in the 5th, Logan Henderson in the 6th, and Ashcraft in the 7th. So I had all of them circled, and he went and jumped them around and got them, which I thought were great picks.
Yeah, I mean, Henderson and Ashcraft, Henderson in the 6th, Ashcraft in the 7th. I mean, those could end up being max picks on those guys.
For sure.
Or close to max picks on those guys. But I wanted Benj. I wanted Michael Harris. I think honestly, like Anthony was probably the one I wasn't going to go with just because of
last year.
Yeah, I think he's like the least proven of these guys, right? But I totally get it. Like the talent is undeniable and just got to make you feel like, I know it's kind of tongue in cheek, like, oh, well, who do you hit that home run off of? Like, how small was the park, et cetera. But like, just that his wrist, is back to, he looks like normal Roman Anthony. Like, I think that does matter.
Yeah, he couldn't swing for 3 months. So the fact that he's out there and confident in his swing and was able to do what he did yesterday was like the box that I needed to see checked there.
Yeah, no doubt. And there was another outfield legit prospect who went here as the 12th prospect off the board. And let's see, what number outfielder was he off the board? Joshua Baez was where is he? He was the number 27 outfielder off the board. So Joshua Baez already getting drafted as an outfielder 2. And he went at the beginning of the 8th round to Dom. Another fun pick for Dom's team there. And the prospects that went in that range, Joshua Baez went just after Parker Messick. He went ahead of Carter Jensen, Sam Antonacci, AJ Ewing, Bryce Eldridge, Chase DeLauder. So like the Baez at the beginning of the 8th, that's either going to look like probably a steal or a reach. Maybe it ends up exactly right, but just kind of a fun pick right in the middle of the draft there.
Yeah, I feel like Dom had more fun than anybody else in that draft. Just, my favorite part was when he took Austin Riley and Corey Seager in the 11-12 turn, and he couldn't even get through it without laughing. And he said to you last week, I'm probably going to leave with Corey Seager, and he knew the risks going in. So I just really enjoyed watching him put his team together. And then he takes Cody Ponce at the end of the 15th as like the last pick to end the draft, which, got a good laugh from everybody as well. So like, I don't know, Dom's team is super interesting. And if again, but in all seriousness, like Brian Baker as a closer in the late 5th and taking Jared Jones there at the end of the 7th, like those could be elite picks that we look back on as max picks. So, there's a lot of upside on his team.
Yeah. And I mentioned a lot of the people losing eligibility, gaining eligibility on that pod with Dom last week. I actually had a couple whiffs that I want to just set the record straight on. I had not noticed that Yandy Diaz was going to be UT only. I guess just because everywhere I have Yandy Diaz, he's just been like set it and forget it all year, that like it just hasn't really mattered. Apologize for the plane flying above me right now, but like I just never had to check on where Yandy Diaz was sliding into the lineup, and so the fact Yandy Diaz is UT only completely escaped me. And then I hadn't realized until we did this that Kyle Stowers is outfield first base eligible now. So just a couple errors from last week's pod. For those of you out there that have Yandy Diaz, he is UT only now. Still, I think a fine pick in the 9th round there to Ryan Bloomfield, but I think that's just one of those weird things that I discovered during the draft. Anything else jump out to you? Any other notes that you made that you want to get through here?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about kind of the pitching in round 7 and 8. There was a ton, you alluded to just sticking with hitters while all those pitchers were getting taken, but there's a big group of those 15 or so starters that went there. I'll list them out: McLean, Wu, Ashcraft, Hunter Brown, Sonny Gray, Parker Messick, Jared Jones, Imanaga, Joe Ryan, Garrett Crochet, Reed Detmers, and Sandy Alcantara. And I mean, like, I wasn't going to run it back with Anthony and Crochet because they're like half the reason why my teams are shaky this season. But I was as interested in Crochet's value here as anybody. And he ends up going in round 8, which, there's a lot of unknown there. He's going to come back in relief this season, but he was going in round 1. That along with Paul Skeens, right? So like if we sat here 4 months ago and you said that, these pitchers are supposedly going to be on the board in 2027. They didn't have arm surgery yet. Skeens goes in round 5. Garrett Crochet goes in round 8. You'd say, what the hell happened?
Yeah, I think it all kind of comes down to what your approach is to like pitcher injury risk in this specific draft. Like we're not playing for an overall.
Right.
And, to me, like a Hunter Brown, Crochet, just a little too risky for me there. Like Max Fried, Tyler Glasnow will kind of go in that round. Just not the way I choose to play it in this with the 6 weeks plus the playoffs still to go. But like that's to my detriment in terms of my strikeouts. Like I think I'm pretty weak on strikeouts compared to the rest of the room in general. And so, I would rather be weak in pitching heading into the final 35 rounds than weak in hitting personally. But I definitely see the other side to that coin. There's just the amount, like the caliber of pitching that's still out there in terms of starting pitchers. Let me see if I still have my sheet, but like, I guess like Dustin May was someone I considered. Ryan Pepio, Taj Bradley, Bryce Miller. I don't think those guys got taken. But like that's kind of the caliber of pitcher that was available. Spencer Schwellenbach, like Mike Soroka, Foster Griffin, like
Troy Melton.
Well, Melton went in the.
Oh, did he? I didn't cross 11th, him off.
Yeah.
I was considering Bryce Miller at the very end, and then I looked at the box score and saw he got lit up again, and I got scared off.
I know that like that's what was happening. Like I just kept looking at the starting pitchers available, and then I'd look at the guys when it was my turn to pick, and it'd be like they're available for a reason. Like something recently went wrong with them. So
I know.
Yeah, again, like the second guessing, I never second guess myself in like a March draft because I have all the information, but just the mid-August draft, such a fun animal. Anything else you wanted to mention, Bob?
No, I think we kind of covered everything that I had written down there. But this was just like, generally a really fun exercise and an honor to be in a loaded room like this. I got in there and just felt a little intimidated when things were starting, but I think it worked out okay.
Absolutely. And it's good to have you in the league. And of course, our thanks to Rob DiPietro for commissioning the league and to the NFBC for hosting the league. And thanks to everyone for watching and listening to the RotoWire podcast, brought to you by Circa. And I will have my big top 100 prospect rankings update in a little over a week on August 27th.